For decades, people across America have shared the same chilling whispers. They speak of pale, strange children who show up on lonely nights when the wind is still and the rain softly falls. These children knock gently at your door or tap on your car window, asking for one simple thing: to be let in. Their eyes, though, are what you remember. Eyes darker than a starless sky, black as the nightmares you wish would stay buried. Some of these rumors ended up in tiny columns of old newspapers. In 1996, a man in Texas reported seeing two kids by the roadside during a thunderstorm. He stopped, thinking they were lost or abandoned. But when they turned to face him, he said their eyes weren't just empty. They were like bottomless wells of darkness, swallowing up the light around them. He left that night, but the memory never left him. Now, they're known as the Black-Eyed Children. No one can truly say what they are. Some call them spirits of lost children who never found rest. Others think they're demons, wearing an innocent mask. And some believe they're neither ghost nor demon, but something far older. Whatever they are, the same warning echoes in every story. They cannot enter unless you invite them in. Years later, on another night just as wet and lonely, a young man named Brian was driving home after a late shift. The road was empty except for the gentle patter of rain. The steady rhythm on the windshield was like a lullaby, tempting him to drift off behind the wheel. As he turned onto a side street near the edge of town, Brian almost didn't see them. Two small figures standing perfectly still under a flickering street lamp. They were so still they looked unreal, like broken dolls someone had left behind. Against every instinct, Brian slowed down. The closer he got, the clearer he could see. They were children, a boy and a girl, both soaking wet, clothes clinging to their small frames. The boy stepped forward and lifted a hand to the glass. Tap, tap, tap. The sound was gentle, but it cut through the rain like a knife. "Sir, could we have a ride?" the boy asked, voice oddly calm and polite, as if he were reading from a script. Brian's heart skipped. There was something unnatural in the way they spoke. Too calm, too precise. The rain seemed to grow louder around him, the soft knocks blending with the drum beat on the roof. He wanted to drive off, but curiosity pinned him in place. He lowered the window just enough to speak. Cold wind rushed in, carrying a strange, musty smell that reminded him of wet leaves and something sour, like old milk. The boy leaned closer, and Brian saw how pale his skin was, as if he hadn't felt sunlight in years. Then the boy lifted his face fully into the streetlight. Brian's breath caught in his throat. Where there should have been whites and pupils, there was nothing, just endless black. He felt as if he was staring into a hole that wanted to swallow him. "Where are your parents?" Brian asked, his voice barely steady. The boy didn't blink. The girl behind him tilted her head, eyes just as black, rain dripping down her cheek like ink. Together they spoke, words matching exactly. "We need to come in. We can't come in unless you let us." Brian's grandfather had told him old farm stories, spirits, demons, things that needed an invitation to cross your door. He'd laughed at them as a boy, Now, every cell in his body told him this was real. He wanted to shut the window, but his hands were frozen. The knocking grew faster. What started as polite taps turned urgent. Tap, 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 tap. The boy's face stayed inches from the glass. Brian glanced down the empty street, praying for another car to appear. But there was only darkness. In his mind, he heard the warnings. If you let them in, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. But what if they were just lost kids? He wanted to believe that so badly. But the cold dread in his gut told him the truth. Finally, his trembling fingers found the window switch. He rolled it up, cutting off the boy's soft whisper. He turned off the car's cabin lights, hoping to make himself invisible. But he knew they could still see him. They didn't move. The children pressed their faces closer to the glass, eyes like two bottomless pits, searching for a crack in his resolve. The rain outside turned to a steady roar, making the world feel so small and trapped. Brian forced himself to breathe. He turned the key. The engine sputtered, tires slipping on the slick asphalt. As the car lurched forward, he risked a glance in the mirror. They were still there, standing perfectly still, eyes locked on his taillights. The street lamp flickered once, twice, then died completely. Darkness swallowed the road. Brian kept his eyes ahead. He didn't dare look back again. When he got home, Brian bolted every door, every window. He sat up all night, ears straining for any sound. Maybe it had just been his imagination. Maybe exhaustion had made him see things that weren't there. But the image of those eyes was burned into his mind. Few nights later, just after midnight, Brian woke with a start. There it was, the same soft knock. Knock, knock, knock. This time, it wasn't on his car window. It was on his front door. He moved slowly down the dark hallway, every step creaking like a warning. He peeked through the peephole, and his stomach turned to ice. On the porch, drenched in rain, stood the same two children. The boy tilted his head. The girl's eyes locked on the door handle. "We're still waiting," the boy said, voice so calm it didn't feel real. "Please, we still need to come in." It sounded so polite, so gentle, but underneath there was something ancient. Something hungry. Brian stumbled backward. The knocking grew louder. Tat-tat-tat, tat-tat-tat, echoing through the walls like a heartbeat he couldn't silence. He pressed his back to the door, eyes wide, praying it would hold. When dawn finally came, the knocking stopped. Brian cracked the door open, hoping he'd imagined it. But his porch was wet with tiny footprints, leading nowhere. The wind carried a whisper he couldn't quite hear. Night after night it happened again. Sometimes the knock came at his front door. Other nights it was at his bedroom window, or even the basement hatch. And always that same soft voice. "Please, we still need to come in." He knew if he answered, it would be over. And so the story goes, If you ever hear a gentle knock at your door at midnight, don't open it, don't look, don't speak. Once the black-eyed children find you, they never really leave, and their knocking, it will follow you forever.